Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me once again is Abby Maxman, the president and CEO of Oxfam America. Abby, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
This week, President Trump officially marked his first full year back in office for the second time. And when you're looking back at the last year, USAID was really essentially in the administration's crosshairs from the beginning. You and I talked multiple times about the dismantling of USAID in 2025, but within the first few weeks of President Trump's second term, Elon Musk and Doge took a chainsaw to the foreign aid agency. And at the time, you said the shuttering of USAID was a form of cruelty that was undermining U.S. interests. An alarming new report from Oxfam found that a child under 5 could die every 40 seconds by 2030 due to U.S. aid cuts. So to start off the conversation, can you talk to us about this really shocking analysis?
Yeah, thank you for putting a spotlight on it. It is shocking analysis, especially as a counter narrative to what the Trump administration continues to say, that no harm, no death, no hurt has been done by these cuts. We know 1 year on that the harm has been devastating. And our analysis does show, as you noted, that a child under 5 could be dying every 40 seconds by 2030. This is huge, and this was already conservative estimates that we are seeing data and analyzing what the Lancet shared back in July, but also it corroborates what we're seeing on the ground every day. We know that programs have been shuttered, life-saving programs for clean water, food, things that keep people alive and children alive are no longer available. And so we know the consequences have been enormous. And as we've been saying, it is unconscionable that the wealthiest country in the world did this in such a harmful, hurtful, and chaotic way.
I mean, just hearing that number, it's really hard to wrap your head around that a kid under 5 could die every 40 seconds by 2030. But I know that you and your organization, you guys are boots on the ground around the world. I mean, what are some of those real life stories?
Well, there's sadly too many, and it's terrible to think about the rollback of progress for under 5 child mortality, for an example. That it's the first time that we've seen such a rollback. It's been terrible. But when I was visiting the Democratic Republic of Congo, meeting with communities in the east of the country where 70% of humanitarian response and support had been funded by the U.S. government, we saw firsthand that the programs we deliver, and as Oxfam America, we do not take U.S. government funding, but we coordinate with others. We work with local partners. That funding being removed meant that women, and I spoke with a number of them, were making these terrible choices of being forced into sex work to be able to feed themselves and their families. The violence has been terrible. I was speaking with my colleagues and a partner in South Sudan who talked about a 28-year-old man who had only known food aid his entire life at a time when the U.S. cuts meant the World Food Program and others were making cuts to their food. All he wanted was to be self-reliant and live independently, but he was forced to just have reduced rations without any opportunity to find a way forward. So we're seeing this play out in context after context, and I'm hearing it from partners from the Philippines to Syria.
What then do you think the Trump administration is missing when it comes to what you're seeing on the ground versus what they're saying?
Well, a few things. What the American people want. We know humanitarian assistance has been a historically bipartisan issue. People care, and people don't understand, obviously, that it was less, before these cuts, it represented less than 1% of the US budget. So it was a negligible amount. People had false understanding about how much money was going to international aid. Also, that saving lives and improving the lives of others is something both the American people support, but it makes us safer as a country when others are safer. We know that so much good and so many lives have been saved over decades by U.S. support. And these rollbacks have made the U.S. Less trusted partner, ally, supporter, because of the way these were done without giving anybody warning. The suffering and chaos has been enormous, and it feels like a cruel and intentionally harmful set of actions to line the pockets of the ultra wealthy. These cuts in the name of so-called efficiency have been done incredibly inefficiently, harmfully, and also in ways that is to provide tax breaks for the rich.
When you're doing your work around the world, I mean, how exactly are these cuts impacting you? Because I can imagine if you're saying this makes the United States a less trusted partner, you're the actual face on the ground, right? I mean, what's your response other than, hey, I'm really sorry, but my hands are tied?
Well, it has been very harrowing for our colleagues and our partners, and certainly when I was in the Democratic Republic of Congo recently, as one example, that went to a community to talk with some women about some of the water and sanitation and protection work we were doing. And when people heard somebody was coming, it wasn't just dozens, it wasn't just hundreds, it was literally nearly 1,000 people came out of desperation, out of confusion. How could this be? Also, our partners were being who had received U.S. government funding, local partners, and we had always been an advocate for local humanitarian leadership and supporting the U.S.'s approach to supporting partners directly. When the funding was pulled out, they were trying to explain this to communities they serve and work with. And one woman I spoke with, she had been detained, harassed, and there was violence because there was a mistrust of her as a person and her organization and the integrity with which they operate. It is devastating to hear these stories and knowing of the direct harm on people's lives and livelihoods, and that children are dying and people are suffering when it doesn't have to be that way. This is one of the best investments over years and decades that the United States has made, and for it to be knocked down, bludgeoned, has been exceptionally harmful.
And no one wants to hear people are suffering, children are dying, and it doesn't have to be that way. I think that that last part is just the worst part, that this could be different. And you and I have talked about before with these USAID cuts that it was like a faucet where you turn it off and those funds immediately dried up. But if you turn it back on, it's not like everything goes back to the same. But is there any way to reverse this?
Well, unfortunately, there's two stories to that question. One, we can't undo the harm that has been done. This damage both to people's lives and to the U.S. credibility and reputation and U.S. interests is enormous. However, there are things people can do. We are calling for Congress to take strong and unified action to hold the line against these cuts that can save an untold number of lives, and to be able to support the next generation of children who've been forced to live through this crisis and all these terrible cuts so they can not only grow and learn and survive, but thrive. And so what people can do, all of us can take action right now. People can visit Oxfam America's website and sign our petition, which demands action from Congress to protect humanitarian aid. Of course, donating, anybody who can donate to our efforts at a time of great need is welcomed and deeply appreciated, and their dollars will go directly to life-saving work. And we urge people to call their senators right now to ask them to support upcoming legislation on humanitarian and development assistance. People's voices really matter. Things can be reversed moving forward, but they can't undo the harm that people have experienced over the past year.
The report mentioned a silver lining or a bright spot in this really dark number and dark report that the Trump administration announced at the end of the year, a $2 billion pledge for UN humanitarian aid. But with that pledge, the State Department said, quote, individual UN agencies will need to adapt, shrink, or die. And this $2 billion doesn't stack up to what was given in the past. I mean, what do you make of how much money that is?
I'm glad you asked this, Brittany. $2 billion. It's a big number for you and me, for sure. But as you note, 2 years ago, the U.S. donation was $14 billion in 2024, $6 billion in 2025. Needs have increased dramatically. So while any aid and resources is better than nothing, it is a fraction of what is needed and truly a drop in the ocean of need. So it is cruel, it's confusing, and we know that the US, as the wealthiest country in the world, has the ability to provide this assistance. It is less than what was less than 1% of the US budget. I can't do the math fast enough to say what that relatively small amount is, but it really is something that, again, better than nothing, but it does nothing to really substantially address the gaps. And also these conditionalities of, the lack of clarity of how this can be administered. We need to be able to operate effectively as a community and coordinate to make sure the funds we raise are delivered as efficiently and effectively as possible, that they're distributed across needs. When they're changing the rules as we go, it's very difficult to be able to continue to operate as effectively as we would like. Our people are doing heroic work, but the US's chaos that it has sowed has done unspeakable harm.
I think that's something that surprises me every time you and I talk, because this comes up every time, that foreign aid is just a drop in the bucket. It is just such a small sliver of the entire budget. And I think that's something that definitely gets lost in conversations when it comes to this. But when you're looking at perhaps unintended consequences, as you and I talked about, from USAID getting cut, when you're looking at longer term impacts, what do you think those are?
Oh, well, communities can't prepare for disaster the ways that they normally could. There are so many investments that lead to people's development and prosperity and therefore peace. All of these things go hand in hand. We as a community have learned so much over decades of the interconnections of humanitarian assistance, development, peace, and security. When people like that young man in South Sudan can live in dignity and security and have investments in his ability to raise food and be self-sufficient, humanitarian needs go down. When we're only talking about addressing the humanitarian needs, we're not able to invest in the long-term development needs at the same time. And the Trump administration's cuts to USAID has harmed the humanitarian and harmed development prospects and prospects for peace and security and trust in the system and the United States as a trusted, reliable partner.
Abby, I really appreciate you breaking down this report, sharing what you're seeing on the ground. I mean, it's really shocking and stunning stuff. And I appreciate the time today and your work, and you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be with you.